Today on Podcast Them Down, we're talking about the economics of AMON AMARTH. Welcome to Podcast Them Down. I'm Tim Regan from U.S. power metal band Burning Shadows, Fade to Black Metallica tribute, Dual-Violin folk metal band ISENMOR, and recently vacated Graves true zombie metal. Be sure to subscribe, like, or follow. And now, on with the show. I am here with Dave, the drummer of ISENMOR and Burning Shadows, and Mike, the bassist of... Why do I have to go through your resume? Because I have to. The bassist of ISENMOR, the guitarist from RVGTZM, and probably something else I'm forgetting. And I wanted to talk to you two about this great article about AMON AMARTH. So if you heard the name Frederik Andersson, who would you think of? That's a question for Dave more.
Now that I know the context, it would be clearly the drummer of AMON AMARTH.
Right, and not the goalie.
Their classic albums. Not the goalie. Frederik. Oh, wow. Yeah, Frederik Andersson. That's true.
So, I don't know if you've been following the news, and I also don't know exactly when this is going to air, so this is kind of old news, but Frederik Andersson came out and basically said, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this. So do you know about the beef with former AMON AMARTH drummer Frederik Andersson and the rest of AMON AMARTH?
No, this is absolutely brand new to me.
Okay,
Heard
so
something about this.
I want to say maybe I glanced at this article, but
I will say this, though, and I want to let all of our listeners know because I feel it's my duty to disclose any potential bias. When Frederik Andersson left, I stopped listening to AMON AMARTH. It wasn't necessarily, like, causational, shall we say, but, like, yeah, it turned out that his last album was the last one I bought.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily solidarity with Frederik Andersson or a change in quality with AMON AMARTH, but so basically he was fired. So I will link this Blabbermouth article, but that's the vast majority of the source for this episode is this single Blabbermouth article. So Frederik Andersson was fired from AMON AMARTH in March 2015, just as the band was preparing to enter the studio to begin work on its 2016 album, Jomsviking. And I'm going to jump around the article. On, let's see. 5 years ago, after a year of fighting about royalty shares, publishing rights, and them asking for a non-disclosure, we sat down with our lawyers trying to come to an agreement. I tried to claim my 20%, we'll come back to that, but I could not prove which songs I had actually written. The drums are not legally part of the music, hence I lost my share of the rights and had my name removed as songwriter. So they go on and on. Let me, you know how they like to tack on some old stuff at the yes. bottom. So, let's see, Mikkonen. Who's Mikkonen?
Olavi. He's the blonde rhythm guitarist.
All right. He stated about AMON AMARTH split with Andersson in a 2016 interview. I don't really want to go into details regarding Frederik, but basically we just separated. It's kind of like a marriage that doesn't work and you get divorced. And that's kind of what happened to our band. AMON AMARTH bassist Ted Lundstrom described Wahlgren. All right, so that's the guy who replaced him. That's the permanent replacement is Wahlgren. He's a super solid drummer who is very professional and very on the spot all the time. I feel like those are digs at Andersson. He added, "It's much easier if you play if you have a drummer who is tight. It makes our lives easier." So now they're down on his style. But
now I will say, having seen AMON AMARTH live over the years, numerous times in literally every possible event, like from the Auto Bar to Wacken Open Air, I've seen Amon Amarth play, and Frederik Andersson was the drummer at every single one of those shows, and the quality was sometimes that of a live drummer touring in the middle of like a day off when they're about to play a New Jersey parking lot the next afternoon. Like, yeah, sometimes it wasn't perfect.
Which,
But-
you know, that's my favorite interaction with Amon Amarth, was talking to them outside of Auto Bar in Baltimore. And I said, where are you going next? And I forget who I was talking to, but he goes, we are going to New Jersey. And so ever since then, I've called it New Jersey.
And for anybody who is listening who doesn't know the Auto Bar, it is a maybe 100-person capacity club, legally speaking, in Baltimore. Just like everything around it is chewed up. It's a total dive, and in the best way. And it's, you know, the situation was like Amon Amarth was literally almost blocking traffic, trying to load their own gear in at set change.
There's a swanky meat place across the street from it now, though.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
This is yet another reason. Yet another reason to look forward to live shows again.
Yeah.
But I can understand what they're saying, because, and I hope that we get to discuss Amon Amarth's music in some detail tonight, because some of his flexibility with time and with like exactly what he was going to play all the time was what was appealing to me about Frederik as a drummer. And I can see that with Amon Amarth, it might be nice to have a human metronome. Now, I say this having not heard any of their new drummers play. Maybe that's what they were looking for after all these years.
Auto Bar's capacity is listed as, you want to guess? It's more than 100.
256.
More.
What?
It says 400. I don't know how small you have to chop the people up to fit 400 people in there, but that's what this says.
Are they including the like upstairs portion of Auto Bar?
I would assume. I don't know. That number just seems to have come out of nowhere. But
I actually don't. I don't know that I've. Is there something above the balcony there?
Yeah.
A room above that? I've
like
never been up there.
There's a bar upstairs.
there is an upstairs.
They must be
yes.
counting both of those. I've never been up, except for that. You know that one weird backstage room where it's just a toilet sitting in the middle of the room?
Yep. You can stick some people in there too. Yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
We know Auto Bar a little more intimately than most people. So, well,
Michael,
so
I'll take you up to that room with the next time we play there. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I think it would be I think it would be good to talk about Amon Amarth the band before we get into the nitty gritty, and then the numbers that Frederik Andersson decided to throw out, which I found to be surprising. So
I hope they're humorous as well.
So for me, for the longest time, Amon Amarth, the joke I always like to say was, oh, I love those 3 Amon Amarth songs, because they only had 3 songs. Every album was the same thing, in a good way. Towards the end of when I was listening to him, so like Yums Viking is the first one he was not on, I believe. They had a session drummer for that album. Then they hired a different guy to tour, and then that's the guy who was hired. So before Yams Viking, there's Tux Taunt, I believe is what it's called, and that's my last favorite song. Yeah. And it's just because it has such a cool riff, but it's not one of the 3 Amon Amarth songs,
Nice.
So,
well, and there are some albums I think that exemplify their diversity more than others. Like, to me, not that I want to get into rating Amon Amarth albums, but With Odin on Our Side and Twilight of the Thunder God were 2 of the most stylistically diverse albums, like self-contained and also different from each other on both ends of the spectrum that Amon Amarth has done. Like, there was still that heavy, groovy, chugging, Pursuit of Viking sound that I think any Amon Amarth fan or anyone who's ever heard them would probably recognize. But also there was a lot of kind of, I hesitate to say progressive, but for Amon Amarth, progressive harmonies and, dabbling with weird drum arrangements, particularly, I found to be a nice departure from the three Amon Amarth songs.
I do have one thing to add as I'm Googling some of this. Once sent from the Golden Hall, the drummer was Martin Lopez, who went on to join Opeth. And I know very little about Opeth, so I didn't know that.
Oh, really? We should do an Opeth iceberg. Cool. I think that'd be great. And then Mike would just sit there going, "This sucks."
Yeah.
No, just you and me and Aaron should do that.
Opeth is. I've tried harder to like Opeth than I've tried to like any other band, that it's just never worked for me.
Your effort is appreciated. It's just not meant.
Morning Rise.
Yes, I threw everything at him. It didn't work.
I intentionally, Tim, I listened to your Opeth show at UMBC to try to get it. I was like, look, Tim's curating this list. It's got to be good. And I'm listening to it. It's just not working. It's just not.
There's no reason to try anymore. If none of that worked, it's a lost cause. Don't waste your time. And nobody else waste their time trying to get Mike to listen to it. Mike's going to go listen to Devin Townsend and you can shut up. So we gave it the old college try.
I did what I could.
So, bringing it back to money for Amon Amarth. So this whole Frederik Andersson thing has to do with him believing that he's been shorted his rightful share of the rights and publishing for their music. And one thing that may or may not be apparent for with Amon Amarth is they heavily reinvest into their own band. And
is that where they got all of the Viking ships for the stage?
Exactly. So this is like when we were talking to them outside of Autobar, however many years ago that was. I should have looked that up.
It was in 2005. I'm going to say.
Autobar. Let's see if you're right. Oh,
I'm probably.
You are. I'm impressed. You're wrong, but I'm impressed. It was July 12th, 2007. It's a long time ago. So, whoever I was talking to, I my memory's terrible. So I forget who I was speaking to, but he said
either talking to Johan or Ted.
It was probably not Johan, but he said they were going to take all the money they made from their US tour and invest it into their festival shows so they can have pyro and stuff like that in Europe. And I was just like, why? Damn it. I want to see them in Europe instead, because that's where all the money was at Autobar. Like, there's a pole blocking the right side of the stage. Like, yeah, it was great to see him on Amarth in such a small venue, but that's not an ideal situation. If they fling their hair wrong, someone's going to get hurt,
Stuck to a pole.
I love the synchronized windmill. It's fantastic.
Man, I
also love it when it doesn't really work. That's also fun.
I'm trying to remember, I saw Gorguts. My first death metal show ever, I saw Gorguts live. We're pretty much completely derailing the intent of this podcast, by the way.
No, that's fine. That's
fine.
Yeah,
my first show was Gorguts played before Dying Fetus. So at least I got to see Gorguts with that show. Unfortunately, Dying Fetus headlined, but Gorguts windmills, and it's so weird because the music is so bizarre. There's very little steady rhythmically about it, but there you go. You're getting a windmill regardless.
I mean, the theatrics they're essential.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I was distracted. You're telling some boring story about Gorguts. I lost my window. Okay. So back to the rights. So in the article, Frederik says, this is a quote, backstory, after brackets. I really shouldn't be reading out the punctuation, but Amon Amarth's second full-length album, 1999's The Avenger, we had a deal that we would share everything equally. We shared all money equally, so there would never be a fight about who would have their songs on the album. On The Avenger, the split was 100% music to Ollie and 100% lyrics to Johan, the singer. Mm-hmm. The idea was that the best material would always end up on the albums, no matter who wrote it. Unfortunately, most, not all, of my riffs and ideas were rejected. But with this deal, it didn't matter so much to me, and they were obviously rejected because they were not good enough. So, drummer tries to write a guitar part and it sucks. No surprise there.
I mean,
no offense, Dave.
Old time. No, it's fine. It's a classic part of human ensemble music history. The drummer tries to write something that's not for drums, and the other players are like, "What the hell is this?"
And then the guitarist thinks he can play drums. And says, look what I can do. And he plays the one beat he knows.
As a sidebar, that is one of my big insecurities about writing songs. Like, literally getting music out of my head and onto the page is like, is this actually playable by a competent guitarist? I can't do it, I know, but can someone?
You shouldn't be worrying about competent guitarists. You should be worrying about, like, me. You gotta set that bar a little lower.
All right, it's time for a sound effect, Tim. I don't have a board I can use.
Or no, I'll save it. So then the article goes on. This is Andersson still. 5 years ago, after a year of fighting about royalty shares, publishing rights, and them asking for a non-disclosure. I already read this before. I'm reading it again. Deal with it. We sat down with our lawyers trying to come to an agreement. I tried to claim my 20%, but I could not prove which songs I had actually written. The drums are not legally part of the music, hence I lost my share of the rights and had my name removed as songwriter. So this I don't understand, because he just said after The Avenger, they're going to split everything equally.
Right.
Then, when he's trying to collect his equal share of 20%, he couldn't prove what he had written. But if they're splitting everything equally, it doesn't matter what he had written.
Is it some retrospective thing where, like they had a verbal agreement and then later we're like, nah, never mind?
Yeah, that might be.
I mean, it could be
what it is.
Yeah, it may have been that nothing was actually signed.
Yeah, I mean that would at least tracks.
But you would think that they would, because The Avenger was released in what, 1996?
It said 99.
99.
Yeah, 99. So then after that was The Crusher versus the World, Fate of Norns, With Odin on Our Side, Twilight of the Thunder Gods, Searcher Rising. That's the album with Tux Taunt, with the riff I like.
Okay.
So,
that's a long time not to realize that you aren't getting your share of royalties. Unless, of course, you're literally reinvesting every single penny that you make into the band.
So,
because 20% of net nothing is nothing.
Right. So if you look at the track listings, The Crusher, which came out in 2001, so this is after The Avenger, stuff is still split up by who wrote it. And Frederik Andersson only has a writing credit for Masters of War, which is track 2. And then after that, if you look at anything, it's all tracks were written by Amon Amarth. So
who is the contractual entity known as Amon Amarth? So
if you leave Amon Amarth, like, is it Is it an album you were on, you get 20% of until you leave the band, or in perpetuity? Like, is that the argument?
Yeah, that's interesting. The other, and like another interesting perspective on that would be like, does their new drummer now get all of the royalties that should be going to, quote unquote, who Amon Amarth is, even though he didn't play on any of those albums?
It's a good question. So,
Yeah.
so on top of that, he points out that drums are not legally part of the music, which I have always thought was hilarious. So,
I mean,
and at some point it becomes a philosophical question. What can you take away from a song and it's still the song? You know, and I think that's why music and lyrics are separate.
right,
When
I
you
agree.
divide royalties.
And also, well, but music is more complex than that because, like, there are any number of songs that any metalhead could identify from just the drums or just any one of the instruments. So, like, at what point does, like, if Lars decided that he was going to do the thing with the double bass drums in one, like, did he write that by virtue of, like, making that kick fill?
Yeah, and I think Death Angel claims they stole that from him. He stole that
Naturally.
from them. You know,
And then that gets beyond like the nature of the collaborative writing process that most bands go through. Because if Amon Amarth is anything like the bands that I play in, I get a workable drum outline, and then I write what I consider to be the drum part. But I don't ever really feel like I'm writing it in a vacuum, right? And I don't know. I think that it's, when it comes to like the performance medium, like if we're talking about how artists should be paid, like I can support the notion that Amon Amarth is getting the Amon Amarth money and then it's divided equally, even if certain amounts of effort are expended differently amongst the band in terms of that creation. Everybody is still making that music. So like if it's a live record or even if it's a live in studio performance, that regardless of songwriting, I can see an argument for an even split of some percentage. But then, yeah, it's a philosophical question. Like, is the performance, how much percent of that is the identity of a given song? Like, is the performance 30% and the songwriting is 70% to identify it as a creation? Or how do these things get defined? And I imagine that there are a lot of lawyers in Stockholm who have had many discussions similar to this in recent months.
It is odd. Like, how did this begin? So this isn't just. So just to make sure that it's clear for anybody who's listening, this isn't just like an Amon Amarth thing. Like, oh, they've just decided that the drums don't count. Like, this is an industry-wide decision, right? Like, and it's by convention, not necessarily by. So disregarding the philosophical aspect, it's just by like, oh yeah, that's just how we do things, and I don't understand why that is.
To play devil's advocate, and I'll explain it, is because if you and Tim write a song and you spend time on the lyrics and the melody, and wait, because
Dave is drum-splaining.
if you guys spend that time and all that stuff, and you like really write a good song, and
So this is a hypothetical.
This is a hypothetical, complete hypothetical. You're like, this is awesome. We've got a great song, guitar, bass, like meaningful vocals, a lot of great lyrics. We only need a drummer to make it great. So I show up and I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. All right, so that's a third the effort, so I need to get a third the payment. I'm 1/3 of that performance. So that's why the convention is the drummer doesn't get paid. Because for so much of rock music, it's nothing but... And that's really not songwriting.
Fair enough.
How then do you explain the fact that Lars Ulrich Rick, has writing credits on every single Metallica song?
He provided the practice space and told James that that's how it's going to be, asshole.
Well, James has the other half. And then occasionally
Exactly.
they'll toss some crumbs
Maybe
to
Kurt
someone
gets
else.
something.
Right. So
Please don't kill us, Metallica.
before anyone asks, we do even splits. Well, up to this point, we've done even splits for whoever contributes to a song. But with the way we've been writing things now, it's going to have to be even splits across the board for everyone. So, which is easier to file. So that's good. That's what I'm.
The main
I've gotten
compensation
lazy.
the main compensation I've received from being a member of literally any band, apart from like the per diem I used to get in college, is drink tickets. So I'm not too hung up on songwriting credits apart from that, as it strokes my ego to see my name there in the line notes.
You get 1/5 of a drink ticket. We all take a sip.
No matter what, somebody else
Pre-pandemic.
gets my drink ticket. So
Yeah, and again, this is why I need to get more time playing shows with Mike, is for the extra drink ticket.
All right. So Frederik goes on to say they did offer. Here we go. They did offer me to keep my share of the songs I had written riffs for, but being so few, I told them to keep them too. So he totally pulled a Timo Tolkki. He said, "No, I don't want them anymore. They're all yours." And then
You clean it up.
They go, okay. And then, later he's going to go, "I can't believe they took that. They took my rights." So, I don't regret that, but I have to confess, I never expected them to actually go through with removing me. They did. All right. So, he goes on to say why I felt entitled to my share. I was never hired. I know no one can hear the air quotes I did, but I was asked to join the band when there was no income. There was no business. In fact, the first 5 years or so in the band, there was no income. 5 years of the band, no income.
Wow. Is that implying that they weren't in the red?
Perhaps, because he goes on to say the years 1999 through 2008. So what album does that bring us to?
Brings us to...
That's after Odin on Our Side.
Yeah.
That is Twilight of the Thunder
before.
God. So this is like everyone knows who Amon Amarth is by this point. This is
like to put it in context in terms of the show size that they played. Now they're going to playing festivals, like touring summer metal festivals. Like, I don't think they played Ozfest, but they did. What the hell? Sounds of the Underground in the U.S. And they were a staple at this. But like in 2006, they headlined the first night in VACATED. Like, everyone knows Amon Amarth at this point. From playing like nothing clubs up to this.
Yep. So during that time, at the end of that time, Frederik's average yearly income was, dramatic pause, $15,000 a year due to low income and lost income from my day job because of time off for tours, etc. No one in the band made big cash. This was the reason we could not record Fate of Norns together as a band. No one of us could afford to take 3 weeks off from work if we wanted to also tour on the album. So he made 15 grand on average every year for 10 years.
Now, is that from Amon Amarth or from selling dairy products? Sorry, that was Johan.
I think it
When
includes...
not doing Amon Amarth stuff.
Right. I think it includes Amon Amarth, based on what he said. He said, due to low income and lost income from my day job.
I just fail to see how you could exist. Maybe I misunderstand the Swedish safety net, but I struggle to see how you would be making $15,000 a year in Sweden and not having some sort of government assistance to cover that. Unless you're absolved, but because there are plenty of culture grants as well. Like, how many? There are plenty. I don't have the numbers to go into it, but trust me, there's plenty.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to do research on the show unless it's during the show.
Yeah, like,
or if you're me.
Like Isan recorded an album that he got money from the Norwegian, and I realize this is Norway, but from the Norwegian Culture Fund to like go write an album. He applied for a grant to create Norwegian art and then went and did it, and that's how we got an Isan album. Like
it's
$15,000? Wow.
It's worth noting that the Scandinavian countries are extremely expensive. If you're, for anybody who's listening, if you're unfamiliar, it ain't cheap. Like it's one of those things where if you ever go visit, you'll do the kind of currency conversion in your head ballpark, and you're like, it's not so bad, and then you realize you're spending like $50 a meal if you go out, right? And like for nothing.
Oh, that's that is a $4.50 can of Coke. Awesome.
Yeah. Things are just extremely expensive over there. So $15,000 a year, I have no idea how you.
Last time I went, which was for the Inferno Fest.
So that was 2011.
That sounds right. That was it was whenever we went for Inferno. Yeah, like with the exchange rate, we were paying $40 for pizza. I think McDonald's was like $12 because we were like, can't afford pizza every night. So
we weren't at TGI Fridays, that is.
Yep, the American Embassy. And then, wow, it sounds so horrible. Like a bunch of Americans go to Norway and go to TGI Fridays and McDonald's. It did happen, but
it did. It was.
We went to McDonald's. We should point out that we went to TGI Fridays because we had already been drinking $10 beers,
yes.
And they're even $10 a piece at the grocery store at the time. I don't know what the exchange rate is now.
It's already compromised, so.
And then with the hangover the next day, I went to McDonald's. So, we didn't seek out the American things until we were, until circumstances forced us that way.
Yeah. Wounded and, scared in a foreign land. We sought out what we knew best. And this is funny, Tim, because that night was disastrous.
It sure was.
That was the night I ended up finding out firsthand how good the Norwegian health system is. When I went to the hospital for a hand injury. And, on the way back from the hospital, independently apparently, I too sought out McDonald's.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I went alone.
Yeah, I went with Abigail, my little sister, who was with us on this trip. And, so the Norwegian hospital x-rayed my hand. They're like, well, nothing's broken. Here's some extra strength Advil. And handed me the cup. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, well, I need something to wash it down with. Let's go to McDonald's.
So we all went to McDonald's at our low point in the weekend. So, I think that works. That works out. Thanks for listening to Podcast Them Down. You can find Burning Shadows, ISENMOR, and Recently Vacated Graves on Bandcamp, as well as Facebook, along with Fade to Black Metallica Tribute and Podcast Them Down itself. Until next time, keep it metal.